Welcome to the Legendarian Green Team. I'm Befuddled Panda, and joining me today we have one who just woke up, Little Red Book.
Hi.
We also have yet to be an imposter, Kyptan.
Hey.
And just got off work, Yettibeats.
Hey, good to be back.
This is the second episode in which we recommend books featuring female protagonists in fantasy and science fiction. In the first episode, we covered recommendations for children through young teens. In this episode, we are covering recommendations for teens through adults. As a reminder of the structure of the episode, we categorize the recs by intended audience. That's not to say older audience can't enjoy books intended for younger audiences and vice versa, to a degree, as you'll see in this episode. For each category, we will go through the panelists one by one to give their recommendations. We will keep the recommendations as spoiler-free as possible. And with all of that out of the way, let's get going. So the first category is going to be the teens, young adults section. I've defined this as, about ages 15 through 18. And Yettibeats, would you mind starting us off?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. So this one for teen, I don't know if this is controversial, but I picked The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I don't know if I pronounced her name right at all. So apologies to R.F. Has anyone here read it by any chance?
I have not, but it's on my TBR.
Yeah. So it's essentially about an orphaned girl who gets taken in by a family who's not very great, so to speak. Think of the Harry Potter's family, who takes him in, and she essentially she either is going to get married off into a bad situation, or she can study for this high class military elite academy, and it's like a 1 in a million chance, but essentially she gets in, and you go from there. But what I recommend it because mostly I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you've heard anything about this book, it kind of starts off into like a magic school, training type of thing. And then it adjusts and pivots into something that is much darker and realistic and based on a real life event. And I said teens for this because when I read this book after finishing it in the second half, how kind of brutal and horrible it was, I looked up things about this book and I saw it was based on a real event. I Googled that real event and I'd never heard of it. I can't believe it's not taught in schools. So that's kind of my main reason for picking it, other than it's an awesome kind of, Asian inspired fantasy. It's got great reviews. It's kind of actually mixed, I found, like between mixed reviews between actual readers. Some people don't like the blatant switch from like a young adult novel to just horrifying realities. But I liked it. I just think when you're a teen, if that was me, when I was a teen, I always wanted stuff. I liked learning, but I liked learning through magical things that aren't real. But if that was a gateway to actual learning things that I would have found boring normally, I would never have read things about. Like, I don't want to give spoilers, but maybe genocide, stuff like that. I would normally never read that, but reading a book like this, and you're like, oh, So that was kind of my main thing, and has a great female protagonist. There's another thing I want to say about her specifically, but we go into spoilers. But she's really unique in how she's written, and not the typical hero arc, I'd say. So check that out.
Yeah, and the third book is coming out soon at the time of this recording.
Yep, possibly called The Burning God. The second one's The Dragon Republic. I have it somewhere around here. But yeah, the covers are great too. I always love to plug covers. They say don't judge a book by a cover, but that's literally why I buy half my books sometimes.
We had a conversation about this.
Yeah. What I know of R.F. Kuang is that she's pretty young, and she's done really, really well. And I think she's actually going to be in the upcoming like Star Wars anthology. She's writing a short story for that, so that's pretty cool.
No way. First of all, thank you for pronouncing her name correctly. I don't pronounce any words correctly. And it's funny you say that. She's like, yeah, she's in school still. I think graduate school or something. She's in her early 20s. And I went to a short story. I don't want to bore anyone, but I went to Worldcon in Dublin last year, and she was there in a Grimdark panel with Joe Abercrombie, and the whole time he just kept kind of was self-deprecating, saying, "I remember when I was the new young thing in fantasy, dark, grimdark fantasy," making fun of her, and she's like, "Now I'm the old Baez," for anyone who's read his books, and she's the young upstart. But it was just funny. Him kept going on.
But that is definitely on my TBR. Next, Little Red Book. Do you want to give a rec?
Okay, so for something that's completely different, I'm going to recommend The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in the Boat of Her Own Making by Catherine Valente,
I think.
Valente? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's marketed as a middle reader, but I would probably give it to somebody a little bit older because of the language. It's very stylized. And a girl is washing dishes and a cougar shows up with a man in a green coat on its back. It's the Green Wind. And he takes her off to ferry. And so it's kind of a portal fantasy. But it's just a really charming, it's kind of in the same vein as the Lemony Snicket novels as far as how it's written and the feel of it. And it has just, or also very similar to Stardust in the way that it's the atmosphere of the book. Stardust by Neil Gaiman. So, and I really like it, and you should read it. It has a great girl.
It's a series, right?
It is. I've only read the first two.
Okay.
But it's just a really enjoyable read, and she has to be smart and clever and solve mysteries, and she has a dragon friend whose name is Elle, and she has a magic wooden spoon. I mean, you got to love magic cookware, right, Kip?
You do. You really do.
I don't have a lot more to say about it. It's not particularly deep. I feel like I'm yeah, that was a tough act to follow, Yeti.
Magic cookware is all you need. You're fine.
I've read deep stories about magic cookware. Yeah.
Kip, you want to go next?
Sure. The book I'm going to recommend is The Rook by Daniel O'Malley. And it kind of blends elements of superheroes as well as more traditional fantasy. There is a secret service of the British government, which is in charge of locating, identifying, and then kidnapping and training all supernatural children in the British Empire, and then using them in its defense.
Oh no.
And our protagonist is a higher up inside this organization who, through some shenanigans, she is unaware, has lost her memory. And so she has to find out who or what has done this to her, and how is she going to either get her feet back under her and find her her memory eraser, or how to quit and run.
Nice.
And it's a fun little like espionage, counter espionage, British Secret Service book about basically superheroes, because everyone has like a unique power. Like, okay, this person's skin is as hard as diamond. This person's is like actually one person spread out in 4 bodies. This person can go into your dreams and maybe kill you there. Maybe. We'll see.
Didn't you? I'm sorry.
Did I recommend this earlier?
Yes. Didn't you recommend this earlier? Not. I mean, on the very first episode, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I am, and we can cut this.
No,
so I'll
it's
go into my
fine.
second recommendation, which I'm pretty sure I didn't recommend. Contact by Carl Sagan. It's not a fantasy book, but it has elements of fantasy, and it's pretty excellent sci-fi. You follow the story of Ellie Arroway and her search for extraterrestrial life, and what happens when she and the rest of planet Earth find a signal from another star system. and it's a complex exploration of intelligent life in the universe, and astronomy as a whole, radio astronomy as a specialty, and well, not to put like a huge bow on it or anything, but religion and atheism combined. And I think it's meant to basically give some thought experiments and some arguments for either side, and not really come down firmly on one side or the other. Though there's a strong argument for atheism within this book.
So it's not the God delusion.
No, it's absolutely not the God delusion. It's like, hey, some things you have to take on faith, but science is a pretty good tool for finding things out.
But that seems like an ideal book for that age range too.
It's a little dry. It is a little dry, I will say that.
But for someone who's interested in science, maybe.
But for a precocious little scientist, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that you use the word precocious.
That's a great word.
We're out of our league.
If you use that word, you would read this book.
Yes.
Well, the reason why I didn't recommend my first book is because I was like, a precocious 12-year-old would like this book. But
there's no problem with recommending books for precocious 12-year-olds.
Oh,
You
and
just
I
have
would
to make sure and clear that, like, okay, this is the audience I'm recommending this book to.
Right. Well, I didn't.
Nice.
yeah.
So in the vein of a sci-fi, my recommendation is The Lunar Chronicles. And I think it was Chesky in Discord who also brought it up. And it's a series of 4 books with a short story collection, actually one short story collection and then another novella kind of thing. But the main books are Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter. And the first book is suitable for like preteens because it does read younger, but the books mature as the series goes on. And they're loose fairy tale retellings of Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and Snow White. There's a deadly plague ravaging the people on Earth. The lunar people are biding their time to make their move. The first book starts with Cinder, who is a teenage cyborg who becomes heavily involved in an intergalactic struggle while trying to figure out her past and why she became a cyborg in the first place. So it was definitely like after college, after years of dry, hardcore reading, textbook reading, I was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to ever get back into reading for fun? And a while I took a break from reading and then I picked up the series. At the time, it was a pretty popular series, and I was hooked. It was very interesting with all the fairy tale retellings out there. Like the Lunar Chronicles was pretty refreshing, given the more modern kind of twists. There are some tried tropes like insta love, but there are plenty of examples of female protagonists standing their ground and making their own decisions. Each book follows a different female protagonist and their own adventures and how their paths relate to each other.
I love fairy tale retellings them so much.
Same.
Me too. I'm not embarrassed to say it.
There's a reason they're persistent stories.
Right. They deal with themes that are very, very real.
And universal.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like, you start off with something that's like kind of familiar, but then go off in a new direction, add new twists and flavor. Which a different recommendation, could you recommend it for teens? Maybe, but like the Witcher, at least the first 2 short story collections, I didn't realize there would be like fairy tale elements in there, but there totally were. So, anyway.
Yep. You get Little Red Riding Hood, you get Aurora, you get all sorts of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Lunar Chronicles is by Marissa Meyer. I forgot to say that earlier. Okay, other recommendations for teens, young adults. Little Red?
So The We Free Men by Terry Pratchett, starring Tiffany Aching. And it's so, well, I mean, it's first of all hilarious because it was written by Terry Pratchett. And I know Yeti wanted to recommend this book, so
it's one of my favorites.
It's great. She rescues her kidnapped brother from the fairy king, and she's a burgeoning witch, and she teams up with the local son of the Lord, and she has these adorable little Scottish Celtic men that are blue that are this big. I'm holding my fingers very close together for those of you listening. And there's also a really great illustrated version of the book that has little blue footprints all over the pages, which I read to my kiddos when they were little. So, and it's a series. There's 4, I think.
I've
What do you-
actually I loved it so much, and I've never read on because I didn't I didn't want to ruin it, even though I've heard they're all good books. But I just like this past weekend, I just saw at a bookstore and I bought them, the third and fourth. Or is there 4 or 5? I don't know. I got 2 of them.
They're
And
all good books. I think the last one suffered a bit from the death of the author,
yeah,
but
wasn't fully
they're all
finished.
good
But they
books.
just
I think it needed like one more half pass of editing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was so happy that Red wanted to bring this up. I solely wanted this. I want people to read this book and people to know about it, which I'm sure they do. Solely for this quote, if you don't mind me reading it. You guys might know which one it is. It's if you trust in yourself and believe in your dreams and follow your star, you'll still get beaten by people who spent their time working hard and learning things and weren't so lazy. And it's seriously one of
I
my
totally
favorite
forgot
quotes.
about that quote, but it's true.
It's the best. I wish that was like bulldozed into my brain as a kid instead of my mom just saying the first part and just leaving
Yeah.
out the second half.
It's a great
Seriously.
lesson for kids to learn.
It really is. Work hard. I mean, have fun and stuff. There's other. I don't know. I love that quote. I love the way it's played in the book. That's really all I have to say about it. And like Red said, it's funny. You know, obviously it's Pratchett, and you know Tiffany's such a great character too. I look up to her, and I'm a 31-year-old man.
I was going to say, I want to be her when I grow up, and I'm
Yeah.
going to be 41 in a couple days.
It's one of the reasons that I love Pratchett's witches in general is because they're so incredibly grounded in real world common sense and work ethic and community spirit and really just great values.
Yeah, for sure.
I have only read one Pratchett book. It was the Color of Magic, which wasn't my favorite book. But I do have We Free Men, so I'm very excited to give that one a try.
They are incredibly different books.
Yeah,
Okay,
they're not.
good.
There's no comparison.
Awesome.
Except that there's humor, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Some of the
Yeah.
writing style carries across, but his writing style has gotten much more refined since then.
Oh,
And
good.
then he's also transitioned it more into a YA frame in the
Mm,
Tiffany Aching books as well.
Yeah,
So
it's
they're
definitely
very different.
it's definitely YA. It's so they're easy breezy reads. There's no
awesome.
footnotes.
Oh, okay.
At
Nice.
least I don't think there are. Are
I
there
love the
footnotes?
Pratchett footnotes. There might be. I
I do
forget.
too, but
Kip, do you have another one for this category?
Not in this category, I don't think.
Okay. Do we have more for YA? If not, we'll move to adults. You got another one? Okay, yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
make it quick. It's Running with Demons by Terry Brooke. Or sorry, yeah, Terry Brooks. Running with Demons, and it takes place on the 4th of July, which is important to the plot, in a Midwest town. And it's about 50% POV of a teenage girl who's been abandoned by her father, and her mother's dead, and she has a magic dog, and she takes care of the woods. So it's related to the other Terry Brooks series.
Okay. Can
So
you read it as a standalone, or do you need to read the other?
no, I did. In fact, I didn't realize it was related until Craig said something about it.
Oh, okay.
So
I
yeah.
want to know more about this magic dog. I guess I'll have to read the book.
It's I don't know. I don't want to get. I can't tell more though. I
I
don't
know,
think
I know.
not
It's
without
okay.
spoiling it.
I will have to read the book to find out.
It's like how you can't
And
say more about the magic dog in Lyriel.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Which I
Something,
haven't read that one either. And so
but
many
we can't.
books.
We aren't recommending that because we already recommended it.
No double dipping.
Yeti, did you have another one for YA?
Yeah, just real quick, one honorable mention. I forgot about this one. 12 Kings in Sharakai by Bradley P. this last name Bowler. I want to say it's spelled very strange, but yeah, just look that up. It's like it's it's like Aladdin mixed with pit fighting and family mystery, so to speak. But it's about a girl named Sita who is a pit fighter, a young pit fighter for the poorest parts of this city called Sharakai. And it's like a large desert city ruled by, it's in the name of the title, 12 kings. They're all represent 12 different tribes of this desert kind of city. And it's just, for this age group, I think it's just a fun way to get into fantasy. It's, if you like Aladdin, which people do, I hope they still do. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the 90s, late 80s, 90 kid in me. But Sita is like a driven figure. Pit fighting, I think, is always cool. And then she's trying to find out her past about her parents, which I think always works. And then, it's a cool setting, a cool desert city, which I don't think there is. Well, I know there's Dune and stuff, but I feel like it's not used as well as, it's not used as often as the typical medieval type of fantasy setting. So I always love, I'm the opposite of Anakin Skywalker. I actually do like sand. So sand cities are cool for me. But yeah, just a quick plug. I think that's it's not super deep. Like it's not, Todd wouldn't go crazy for any level 3 stuff, but it's just a fun, massive epic fantasy. I think it's like 6 books it'll be. I think there's 4 out now. But it's like, if you're one of those kids who just loves fantasy and you're young at that age and you want to explore everything, this is like, you'll drown in fantasy.
I just looked it up, and the cover for at least the first book, it does look like something that would catch my eye in the bookstore.
I told you, the covers. That's all about. The writing, I don't care. That's not true, but it is a great cover too.
Awesome. Any other recs for teens or YA? All right, we're moving on into adults. Okay. And Kip is super excited. So let's start off with Kip.
Okay, which one of my prostitute stories do we want to start with first?
Which one would you recommend the most?
All of them.
Oh, geez. I'm going to go with the robots, not the angels. Okay.
Oh, goodness.
So my book with a female protagonist that I'm recommending in the firmly adult category is Saturn's Children by Charles Stross, which tells the story of an abandoned sex droid in a post-apocalyptic future where there's no humans for her to have sex with.
What is this, a horror novel? Oh my goodness.
It is a sci-fi novel which shows how having a human realistic body in a world that no longer has humans in it is actually quite a detriment.
My gosh.
From the amount of mass that you need to buy a budget for in interplanetary travel, to the amount of environmental conditioning that you need to have in order to make sure that your pliable skin doesn't fall off, to non-standard ports and adapters. It's all there. And then in addition,
standard ports.
And then in addition, all robots are somewhat have a baseline control of like Asimov's second law, where you must obey any orders given to you by a human being. And she looks just close enough that maybe she could get away with ordering some people around that way by pretending to be human, if there were some shenanigans involved. It's a crazy story. It tells a story of a crazy future, and it's Charles Stross. It pushes boundaries. It has fun things to say about modern society and what he imagines it might turn into in the future. And yeah, there's sequels to it which involve like Bitcoin scams being central plot points. Interstellar Bitcoin scams / insurance agencies is really the plot of the sequel to this book. So just imagine what it's like.
Essentially, this book is for the darker side of the Legendarium listeners out there. The dark corner of
the darker slightly geekier side that really likes their hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
because it does go down the route of like, okay, this universe is going to obey laws of physics like reaction mass and delta V and energy conservation. So it has those aspects going for it, which I always find interesting.
I did look up this book, and one of the editions of the cover.
How are we talking about covers during this episode?
I'm sorry, but I do have to say, like, if I saw that in a bookstore, I would not pick it up. So thank you for making the recommendation, and I
See,
will
I
look.
would not have picked this book up from the cover if I
Mhm.
didn't instantly buy everything that this author puts out.
Okay. All right.
What was it called again? Now I'm going on Goodreads.
This is
What was it?
Saturn's Children by Charles Stross.
We had this whole conversation during our Curse of Chalion thing too, and Hierophant wanted to do a cover episode.
I mean, this one could make that episode of. I don't know what to say other than your description has made me intrigued, and I did mark it want to read on Goodreads. We'll see if other people comment about me marking that want to read.
Yeah, the back of that cover is just her legs, isn't it?
Oh, no. Now I have to look.
Listeners, if you're curious, yeah, give it a Google.
Look on the Googles.
Kip's description of it was great and intriguing, but Panda's reaction was even better. So now,
I mean, it is for adults. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, it's absolutely for adults.
Mhm.
Sex is often used for a joke in this universe.
Well, I mean,
Interesting.
it can be funny, honestly.
It can.
It can be funny, especially when things are just needlessly gendered. Like,
Oh,
Or when you have ports that aren't applicable.
are you talking more like innuendos?
I'm
Or
talking about how like transit mechanisms have genders and engage in sex.
what? Okay, I guess I have to read this book.
I see.
Okay.
It's like
and the protagonist is like, ugh, why? Is like on a conveyance and is like trying to like ignore the fact that her method of transport is having sex with another component of itself.
Okay, I think I got control of myself now.
That cover is fantastic.
Maybe.
I'm kind of speechless, to be honest.
That cover is a book that if I was reading that on the train, I would just be so embarrassed.
So embarrassed.
Well, erotica, like
I was able to slip that cover past my parents when I was reading it as a kid.
Oh no! Oh no!
Out of curiosity, because you said I'm reading it as a kid. How old were you when you read it?
I was like 16.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. To follow that up, who would like to go next?
Oh, never mind. I was 10.
What?
No, I was 20. I was 20.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
Why were you taking books back your parents in the first place?
I was 20.
This is a roller coaster.
Because when I was 20, I still kept my primary bookshelf like in my childhood bedroom.
Okay.
And to follow that up,
I guess I can go second again. I don't know. So I'm gonna recommend it's in Welsh, guys. I can't say the title, but it's Guinevere, basically, by Mercedes Lackey.
okay.
And normally she doesn't write normally she's very fluffy. This is not a very fluffy book. I'm not saying it's super deep or anything, but it's a retelling of King Arthur from Guinevere's point of view. But there's 3 of them, not just one.
There are
There's
3
3.
Guinevere.
There's 3 well, they aren't all named the exact same name, but they all are nicknamed Gwen.
Oh,
They all have very similar names and they're sisters.
okay.
And it's just a really interesting take on that story. The main character that we're following wants to become a warrior, not a wife, and her sisters become witches. It's just an interesting retelling, and it's very different from her normal fare. I know Kip's read Lackey, but
Is this a standalone?
I only read the
Yes.
gay series though.
The gay series, is that what you said?
Yes. I only read the trilogy where the protagonist was a gay man.
Okay, well, I mean, she writes really fluffy stuff usually, and this is a little more serious. And she obviously did some research into the myths around King Arthur.
It
And,
did have magical talking horses.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
No, not this book. Kid, that's your book.
Oh,
Your gay book. She has a whole big series of books with magical talking horse. They're not horses.
Of course they're not.
And I can't tell you what they are because it'll ruin the spoilers. No, but this is a standalone book. The one I'm recommending is a standalone.
Okay. Nice.
would you say it's a good entry point into Lackey? Because I've never read anything.
I
Sounds intriguing.
would no,
Go to the talking
not because
horses. Okay.
not because you can't read it, but because it's not indicative of her normal style.
Right.
Like I would say, if you like that, you would like this book, you would like all the rest of her stuff. I would not say that.
Gotcha.
But I like her normal stuff.
Yeah, I haven't read any Mercedes Lackey either, but I have what's it called? Like there's the Arrow trilogy or something.
Right. Arrow's Flight. Right.
Yeah, something like that. So, I do want to give her books a try. I mean, because I see her books on the shelves all the time, right? Used bookstores, new bookstores, like all the time.
Well,
I'm just
speaking
curious.
of retellings, she has 2 series that retell fairy tales. One is the Elemental Master series, and the other one, the 500.
Nice. Yeti, do you have an adult recommendation?
Yeah, I do. So I'll go towards Kip's leaning with just disgusting sex and prostitution. No, so this series of books the first one's called God's War by Cameron Hurley. It's one of her first works. I don't know if anyone's read Cameron Hurley here. She's like she's a pretty big. I don't know. She's always for women's rights. I always appreciate that. And like the fantasy genre, she's always fighting for things like that. But this book is essentially about a former government-trained assassin who kind of ditched her fellow. They're called beldames. They're government assassins, and she ditched that life, kind of went rogue, and pretty much just does her own jobs, doing whatever she wants. And it's really just a series about her and how she just has sex with whoever she wants, deviously murders whoever she wants, and it's just like when you think of Grimdark, like she's just this is what I think of. Just, but it is gratuitous, I think, and I mean this in a positive way. I think some books can just be over the top, like Quentin Tarantino-esque, and I think that this is it. But the world is so cool. I mean, it's like different planets that have just alien bugs everywhere. And not only that, I like it because the cast of characters. So Nyx is the main character, but she's just this chick who just sleeps with anyone, guy, girl, robot. She doesn't care, whatever. She loves drugs.
What's this book called again?
God's War.
You piqued Kip's interest.
Yeah.
Sex and drugs.
But it's just I'd never seen anything like it. I read this when I was in my early 20s, so I was still that's when I first got into fantasy. But it has the cast of characters, like there's a deeply religious priest who kind of butts heads, and like all these characters just butt heads with Nyx, who I've kind of given you a description of. It's just this ridiculous anti-hero. There's a failed magician, a magician is someone who can control these insects, which is the kind of main for aliens on there. There's a queer communications hacker, his pregnant sister. There's a person who can shapeshift, and this is all part of her crew. There's the shapeshifter who's really conflicted about the jobs he does, and then there's like a alcoholic weapons expert. But like this trilogy just following this group of messed up. Yeah, it's like Guardians on the Galaxy. Rated like
I don't know.
I heard alcoholic weapons as like the compound there.
Sorry. Weapons expert. There you go.
I like my way better.
Yeah. It's a better book that way.
I mean, all I can think of is like your weapons expert is the one who's drunk all the time. Like that's a dangerous combination.
I was gonna say, booze and guns is not good. Not a good combo.
It's a combustible group, but I recommend it for like younger people who want to get into more adult work, who think that this is what adult work is, even though it's not. It's just people who write gratuitous like killing and morally, but she is morally ambiguous. Nyx is just so it's one of the first times I came across someone who's so gray, good or bad. And I'd suggest any of Cameron her books. I mean, her later stuff, her newer stuff is really good. But this is again her early work, but just the setting of this, it's just such a joy, and it's
Nice.
adult in the immature way. But I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, I've heard of Cameron Hurley because she wrote We Are Legion. Is that what it is? We Are
Stars
Legion or something?
Legion.
Yeah. And I have that one of hers, but I haven't gotten to it. So I'm curious to try out her works because I have heard that she's pretty. It's like gender. She plays with gender in her works quite a bit.
Definitely.
So nice.
The Light Brigade is another recent one of hers that got like rave reviews. I haven't read it yet, but apparently it was one of the best books. Sci-fi. I'm not as big into sci-fi, but this is more like sci-fi magic to me. Like definitely not hard sci-fi. I just like people who like use bugs for magic. I don't know what that says about me.
I don't know either, to be honest. Okay, so my recommendation is it's a series. It's called The Others by Anne Bishop, and the first book in the series is called Written in Red, and it's more urban paranormal fantasy, which we haven't really talked about much. But it features a woman named Meg Corbin, who is a blood prophet. This means that she can see the future when her skin is cut. Blood prophets are highly sought after and controlled. Their controllers sells the cuts of their skin at high prices for anyone willing to pay for a glimpse into the future. But Meg escapes her controller and ends up at Lakeside Courtyard, which is a business district operated by the Others, which is non-human creatures. There's tension between the Others and humankind already, and Meg's presence at the courtyard will only make things worse. Why I recommend this is because it is pretty engrossing. Even though it's slower pace, it's still pretty engaging. The characters are really the shining elements of the series. There's commentary about social prejudices, and it has one of my favorite tropes, which is people coming together from different backgrounds to unite and take on challenges. And Meg is an example. She's a different kind of protagonist. She's an example of an adult finding out and learning how to function as an independent person because of her imprisonment by the controller. Everything was like controlled, like she couldn't make decisions on her own. And so for her to get all of this freedom, like she's trying to figure out like what to do, kind of like Murderbot a little bit. It has that kind of vibe to it, so that may explain why I like this series as well. But anyway, anyone heard of this series?
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I don't hear very many people talk about it, even though Anne Bishop, she's written quite a bit. I know her Black Jewel series is more popular, but I would recommend the others.
That's where I've heard her name. I have not
Yeah.
read that series either.
Anne Bishop.
Yeah.
Anne Bishop.
Yeah, I feel like I see her on every used bookstore, and I always mean to get it. And for you, Panda, I will. I'll get the next one I see.
Well, I haven't read the Black Jewels, but I would recommend Written in Red.
Okay.
Next, who would like to go next?
I have
think
one that
Kip.
goes off of that.
Yeah.
I can talk about my other prostitute book, who also has to do with being cut.
Oh, okay.
Because this prostitute is divinely blessed to enjoy pain.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
She is an anguisette. She was marked by basically she was marked by one of the gods of this realm, who is actually an angel who is a protector of Jesus's illegitimate son, who founded France.
I'm in. I'm in.
This is insane.
Yep. And I mean, this is all like intro, chapter, opening, background information that I'm about to tell. Yeah. Blessed Eloah was the son of Jesus ben Yosef's blood and Mary Magdalene's tears from the womb of the earth. He sprang up fully formed, and then wandered across the world, accompanied by 8 guardian angels, and was not really welcomed in anywhere. But eventually he found France and was like, "Oh, this place is gorgeous. I'm going to settle down here." God tried to call him up to heaven. They disagreed. He was like, "No, I have mortal blood in my veins. I'm going to live here." And then God and the blessed Eloi came to a compromise, and they made an alternate version of heaven for all of his descendants. And so people in this blessed version of France have basically just angelic blood in their veins. They go by the top command of Eloi was "love as thou wilt." And so their society is based on free love and consent and knowledge, certain knowledge that they are the most divine place on earth, and that all of them will eventually go to this heaven that their ancestor set up just for them. And our protagonist was brought up in one of the 8 courtly prostitution houses called the Night Court. She was brought up in the oldest and most graceful and serene of the houses, but it turns out that her particular inclination is to be tortured, as one of the companions was the heavenly enforcer of the group, and he tortures people, and that's his angelic purpose. And so he marked her at birth to be tortured for her life and to find sexual gratification and pleasure in it. And so she becomes a divine prostitute, sworn into the prostitute angels service, and eventually she becomes involved in machinations and intrigue and politicking and all sorts of troubles and travails, and gets out of it by being a great prostitute and spy.
And I was embarrassed to recommend a couple books to Lady Sweden on the on the Gen Chat. 'Cause I don't know if I would have put that in Gen Chat.
But yeah, it is a book about a BDSM prostitute who
Not gonna lie, I'm down.
collects secrets from her clients and uses them to change the kingdom.
Really read that.
I just got to ask, how do you find out about these books?
It's not
This one was
hard.
recommended to me by the same person who recommended Mistborn.
Oh my god.
Really?
Yes.
Hilarious.
So this series was written by a Mormon, and this one has torture porn. Perfect.
But yeah. And I mean, they go on and on about how it's they give a map of this country and it's just clearly France. It's just clearly France. But they call it Terre d'Ange, and it's it's the heavenly land. It's the land of the angels. It's where divine blood has made its home, and it has everything you could ever want.
I mean, I just have to wonder, how these authors came up with their ideas. Like, were they hallucinating? Were they just playing a really interesting game of D&D? I have no idea.
I just realized I don't think I ever said the name of the book or the author.
I don't think you did either.
I feel like I can find it.
It's Cushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey.
See, I've heard about that. There you go. I had no idea that's what that was, but
Yep.
How do you spell Cushiel?
Kushiel. Cushiel's Dart by Jacqueline Carey. And people try and pretend that it's not about divine BDSM, but it totally is.
It's so deep. There's so many messages.
It's got over 70,000 ratings on Goodreads, and over 4.0 average rating.
Yep, it's a good book.
Yeah, it's popular. When you described that book, I did not think it was that. I thought you were talking about a self-published book that was written by some guy in his basement or girl.
I'm not going to do that to you.
No, I'd read it. I just
I'm kind of scared to mark it want to read, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah, are your parents your friends on there?
Yeah.
I mean, other people looking at it, they'll be like, huh, okay. Some might ask questions.
put it on a Post-it note, put it on your bedstand.
Okay, so I got my 2 prostitution books done. The others
Okay.
are more outwardly respectable.
This is why we have Kindle, because you can have it on your Kindle. Nobody knows what you're reading on your
Exactly.
Kindle. It's
Exactly.
Kindle.
True.
I read this on my Kindle for sure.
Yep. Okay. I think Little Red, did you have another adult?
I have
Um,
several.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we're going to go with The Air Affair, written by Jasper Ford with 2 F's
Oh,
in his name.
I have read that. Yes.
It's just so it takes place in an alternative 1985 where the Crimean War is still going on, England and Russia. And she's a literary detective, and Hades, the character's name is Hades. He's not Hades. He's named after, actually his first name is Hades, but I can never. It's not stay the ones. Anyway, so she gets sucked into a book, and she becomes she has to solve book crimes, basically, that happen inside the books because the characters are always trying to thwart the actual story. And in the original version of Jane Eyre, it ends it ends with her. Oh, spoilers for Jane Eyre. The book, not the book I'm talking about, but the actual book Jane Eyre. She marries her missionary cousin and goes off on a mission in the original version, and Hades is trying to change the end of Jane Eyre, and that's what the plot of the book is. There's all sorts of really funny plot devices, like the reason why Americans spell color without a U is because there's a U shortage,
Huh.
like a shortage of the letter U. and and so they're like, well, we'll just put it up to cultural differences. And that's why they're going to spell it without a U. And Tom Hardy's books are really depressing because they've been mining him for humor. I don't know if you've
Oh.
ever read Tom Hardy. You have to have a little bit of like, you've read some weird stuff. She ends up getting in trouble, and she has to go on trial, and the trial is held in Kafka's The Trial, like in the book Kafka's Trial. So anyway, it's just a fun, weird
Yeah.
little book. There's a series. He writes another one about the 3 bears solving. So
Yeah, I remember reading the Air Affair. It is kind of meta, right?
yeah,
It's
very
very.
meta.
It refers to other literary works, and the jokes are pretty pretty
Well,
literary.
well, Miss Havendash from Great Expectations is her partner, helping
Yeah.
her investigate crime.
Yeah. Nice.
And doesn't Kip have another book
Yeah,
that's not prostitute related?
I've got 2 more if I want.
Okay.
So let's let Kip go.
Okay. Kip, your turn.
Sure. Okay, so this recommendation isn't a specific book. It's actually multiple books within the same universe by Max Gladstone. So his craft sequence has a bunch of female protagonists, but he has 2 books where they're the only POVs, Full Fathom 5 and its sequel, Ruin of Angels. The entire sequence is a critique of modern society with emphasis on capitalism, inequality, and freedom. But where he really digs in are with the female protagonists, who incidentally often tend to be lesbians, and one is a trans woman of color. The sheer inventiveness of Gladstone is just a joy to read. Like when he opens his novel with a volcano pool where imagination allows our banker priestess's protagonist to extend lines of credit to false gods. It's a trip, but I love the execution. It's just fantastic. And opening scenes like that, he just continues to do off the wall, crazy, but also kind of brilliant analogies and metaphors for modern problems like gentrification, uh, offshore banking, lots of fun stuff. And protagonists are excellent to read.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say I'm pretty sure that we recommended the
I
craft
did it
sequence.
already?
No, I think it was Huron Fan.
Huron Fan did it already? God.
It's not good.
It's okay
It's
because
fine. I just think it's funny because I would be recommending
Oh,
books
Huron
that
Fan absolutely did it, but I'm going to dive deeper into these female protagonists who are awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he recommended the craft sequence, sure, but he did not
You're
talk about
recommending the sassy ladies.
he did not talk about like the badass like lawyer who is a partner in her firm and who can levitate without breaking a sweat, and
Yeah.
is on an extended healthcare plan to eventually turn herself into an immortal skeleton ruling this like capitalist world from her seat at her law firm.
Oh my gosh.
He did not mention how one of the partners in that firm cast down gods and formed a schism in the fabric of space-time, which has resulted in barren land which cannot be occupied to this day. He did not talk about how this lesbian art thief dives into alternate worlds to recover historical pieces of treasure and library books, returning them to the rightful families from which they the invaders have attempted to steal from. And if they don't have rightful heirs, maybe she pockets the change.
She tried.
So, are you calling out Hierophant's lack of recommending these things,
No,
or
I'm saying he had limited time, but I'm saying that the women in these books are amazing and that my specific recommendation of them is therefore warranted and not duplicative effort.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
is
did I
three
mention the time where there's a heist storyline involving a frickin' spaceship company?
No.
Well, there is.
This-
In this fantasy book about book thieves, they also pull a heist with a spaceship company.
Is 3 Parts Dead the right place to start?
3 Parts Dead is probably the right place to start. Yes.
Okay.
But you could totally start with just Full Fathom 5 and be fine.
I've read the first 2 and loved them. I'm pretty sure I recommended the first book to a friend who's like an accountant and never reads fantasy, but I'm like, it talks about like business and accounting and weird stuff like that, or normal stuff like that. And they read it and loved it. They're like, these books are great. It really has nothing to do with accounting, but really. I was like, yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, no, they don't really have a ton to do with accounting. That's true.
I thought there was an accountant in the first book. Maybe I was.
There are accountants throughout the books.
Yeah, it just has nothing to do with accounting.
They do an audit of a dead god at one point.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
They like review his accounts and like see where he overdrew himself.
It's a good recommendation. I stand by it.
Which is fun, but no, it's not like what an accountant actually does for work.
Right.
Do you want to read a book about what an accountant actually does for work? I mean, they make those.
I don't think I do.
I'll read them in a fantasy setting. You know.
I mean, I'd read it for like a human interest story, maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like
Sure.
they talk about the work and it's like done in a paragraph and then they like go home and have boyfriend problems.
Yeah.
That I'd read.
But that's, again, not a book about accounting.
Nope, not a book about accounting.
That's true.
Wasn't there that movie, The Accountant?
Ben Affleck?
Yeah, with
which was not at all about accounting.
No.
wasn't he like an assassin or something?
Yeah, it's about
Eric?
murdering.
Yeah, he has autism. I think he's like an autistic savant and therefore an excellent accountant / assassin, which is, that's a fun story. But yeah, no, in Full Fathom 5, she's a priestess who creates false gods for companies that want to either launder their wealth offshore or get specific like miracle benefits without having to invoke an actual god, just a fake god that still does the same stuff. Like they program it at their will, and they get like a la carte god services, and she builds the god to their specifications.
Wow.
I love the concepts of this. It's nuts. He's so smart too.
Yeah, but they're not gods, they're just idols. which is much more rational and reasonable and acceptable to this corporate culture than engaging in actual god, because those gods have free will.
Gods might ask you to do something for them. That's hilarious.
Okay, so Yeti, do you have more recommendations for adults? We are about an hour in.
Yep, I have one more.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite books of all time, so I'm excited to.
Oh, okay, nice.
You may have heard of it. It's called City of Stairs by Robert Jackson Bennett. And it's the main character is Shara, and she is. I like it because it's a little older of a protagonist. Actually, the second book is really deals with a different main character who's a female protagonist, and she's like midlife. It's really cool. She's like in their 40s or 50s, and it's nice to deal with a character that age group, not a teenager saving the world. But this one's with Shara, and it's set in a city called Bulakov. It's kind of Russian inspired, and it used to prosper because it had miracles and powers that were provided by the divinity, which was the gods in this world. However, the divine protectors were killed and kind of left the city a mere shadow of its supremacy. But the book starts with her. She's going to this city because her former mentor was murdered. So it's her and her secretary / bodyguard, Sigrid, who, if you've ever read Joe Abercrombie, who I may talk about every so often, that character resembles the Bloody Nine or Logan Nine Fingers. But it's this calculating woman and her just brutal, savage bodyguard kind of solving a mystery in this city where the gods are supposedly dead. Take a guess if they act anymore. And it deals with religion and politics really well. I mean, he's another one of those authors like Gladstone who just inserts these topics into a fantasy setting and just does it so well. It's a slower book. It's not like something you run through. I mean, it's a short book, so you still could, but it's one of those books where I just like to kind of sip on it like a fine wine. I don't want it to end, and I'll cherish every page and pick. It's fantastic, and I've talked about it before. She's such a great character.
Nice. That's pretty high praise, like when a book is so good, you just want to savor it.
Yeah, it's because
yeah,
you could run through it, and but I feel like there's so many things to catch. Like I don't think I'm on Todd's level at all with level 3 stuff, but it's one of those books that I know a lot of that stuff's there. That's why I'm slow down and just and it's a cool mystery. I like stories where gods are perished and rumblings of them coming back again. And again, I don't want to go too much in spoilers, but it has good philosophy debates about religion in this world, but also in general. It's good. I think it's been on recommended.
and it's a trilogy, right?
It's a trilogy. Yep. Yes. Again, it's a different character each time. So the first two,
Okay.
but this one has Shara. She's so good. Very cool.
Nice.
And it's an interesting character. She's not always in action. It's always stuff that's in her head calculating. And for like a lunk like me, it's just a nice change of pace to have someone like that. I'm not reading someone like Kaladin, who's old. I mean, and Brandon Sanders, Stormlight. There's a lot of fighting and stuff like that. She's just so calculating.
Awesome. So doing a quick time check, last recommendation from everyone. Are we good
I've
with
got
that?
one more.
I've
Okay.
got 2 because I started Lavinia and then we went to Kit, but
Okay.
I could just make them.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll go Kip first.
Okay. I'll make this short too. My next one is Glass House by Charles Stross. It is in a completely different universe. It's a standalone, and it's about a world where the main protagonist is a man-ish, but he spends most of the book in the body of a woman, in a fake marriage to a woman who spends most of the book in the body of a man.
Okay.
Because this is a world where you can change your gender about as quickly as you can change your clothing. And for kind of a place to hide out between jobs, our protagonist enters a research study where he goes onto a ship traveling between 2 far-flung destinations and pretends to live in like 1950s America, or like as close a simulation as the research like organizers can make it. And they try and reconstruct like the gender roles and social mores and habits and like a job and like weekly church service and and everything of like 1950s America. and they get
Wow.
points based on how accurately they live the simulation.
So there's this podcast I listen to called Hello from the Magic Tavern, and they play a game called Offices and Bosses. Basically that they go pretend to be in an Earth, because it takes place on a different dimension, so they pretend to be on Earth and they have jobs with office politics. It's pretty funny, but
Yep. Except it's not everything is quite as it seems, and one of the study participants becomes like a super abusive husband, and another of the study participants goes missing, and some things happen, and it's more complicated than it seems. Oh, and everyone's dealing with trauma from a galaxy-spanning war that just finished over a censorship worm that screwed every transit network over and had a very high body count and
Dear.
deleted a lot of things. But the worm was carried in human bodies, and every time you would use a teleporter, it would both copy the worm over into the teleporter and into you. And then that's how it spread, was through the ubiquitous teleportation network of this galaxy civilization,
Interesting.
using human bodies as vectors. And that was pretty fun. That was a fun idea. And both the main character and their wife / husband have some pretty severe trauma from that war.
You were making it sound funny, and now it sounds really depressing.
It's both. It's both.
Well, that's fair.
Charlie Strauss. What is inside that guy's head?
Charles Strauss,
Seriously.
yeah, he has some amazing ideas, but they're also very messed up very often.
Best kind of stories, right?
Yeah.
A lot of artists are kind of messed up, honestly.
Also, I love I don't know how big a part that plays in the book, but I love 1950s set or lived in the 50s.
Yeah, and it's very clear that the people setting up this simulation also never actually saw 1950s America. They're like, we have some recordings of I Love Lucy, and that's how we're going to set it up. We're using that as historical context.
All right. Little
So
Red.
I've got 2 more. I'll be
Yeah.
quick.
No worries.
So the first one is Lavinia by Ursula Le Guin, and it's based on, I'm going to say it wrong, by Virgil.
Hmm.
It's the
Aeneid?
story. Well, it's the story of where the Trojans who escaped the Trojan War went to Rome and founded Rome. Aeneid. Anyway, so it's told from the perspective of the Latin princess, Latin meaning Roman, and it's just about these refugees come and this is what happens. So that's another retelling talking about. And then the last one I want to recommend is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodora Goss. And Mary Jekyll, who's the daughter of Dr. Jekyll, is the main character. It's a mystery, also kind of meta. Horizon recommended it to me, by the way, and it's very funny. And
Oh, okay.
About Horizon.
yeah, I miss Horizon. I miss having his voice on our disc. Anyway, and she finds out she has a sister. She decides. Oh, anyway, that's basically all I want to say about that.
What is the name of the second book?
The Strange Case of the
Oh, okay.
Alchemist's Daughter.
I love that.
So-
So Jekyll has a daughter, and does he play a part in the book?
No, he's in the background. The book takes place after it, and her sister is actually Hyde's daughter. But
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Oh.
Mind right now is going everywhere.
and then Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, what? Yes.
I
This is
think I
great.
don't think that's a spoiler. It's like 3 chapters in.
Yeah.
And they have one of the characters is from the island of Dr.
It's like a Marvel or
Kind of,
Cosmere
yeah.
type of
Except
thing going on.
it's an all girls team. They're all
Even
girls.
better.
Nice.
Except for Sherlock Holmes. He's he's a
Where's
boy.
Enola?
Anyway, it's a fun mystery. It's got a Victorian setting. It's just
Very interesting.
and you
I'm gonna
probably
check it
need
out.
to have your Google.
Okay. Nice. Yeti, did you have any more recommendations?
Nope, that was it for me.
Okay.
I'm just Googling that one she just said.
Yeah. All right, then I have my last one and then we're done. So my recommendation is a graphic novel series called Rat Queens, and the creator is Curtis J. Weeb. I'm not exactly sure how to say his last name. His co-creator, there's some controversy about the co-creator, so we're just not going to really talk about him. His last name's Upchurch, and he's no longer part of the series, as far as I can tell. He got arrested for domestic violence, which is really
Oh.
upsetting because this series features an all-female cast, and they're all super cool. Like, it has one of my favorite tropes, which is found family. Each individual brings their own unique contributions to the group. Some have a tragic past. There's LGBT rep. Their adventures are fun, and there are definitely laugh out loud moments, particularly when it comes to Betty, who is a quote, fun loving smidgen thief whose major vices in life are candy, hallucinogens, and large servings of alcoholic drinks. There's been, yeah, I mentioned there's been some controversy about it, but it sounds like it may be getting an animated TV series adaptation, which I can definitely see it, see that happening. Like, it's such a well crafted, like visual story. And you can see that between, I think it was volume 3 and volume 4, there's some stylistic differences in the illustrations because of they have different artists now. But overall, it's just really fun, and the characters are the best.
So you totally sold me, but I went on Wikipedia while you were talking, and under the first thing it says under what it's about, and this would have sold me right away. It says the concept is Lord of the Rings meets Bridesmaids, and that's all I need to know.
Oh
I mean,
yeah, I totally forgot to give an actual description of the series. I just went with why I would recommend it. But yes,
I-
And then controversy.
yeah,
yeah,
this guy was canceled. I'm in.
yeah, totally. Yeah, I would really recommend it. It's fun. That is our episode for today. Thank you, everyone, the panelists. We had Kyptan and Little Red Book and Yettibeats return for this episode. If there are any recommendations we missed, or you want to yell at us about anything we said, especially Kip about his recommendation,
Don't point
please join us.
fingers.
Please join us over at the Legendarium Discord server. You can find the link on Reddit at r/the Legendarium. If you would like to join us in these podcasts, then become a patron of the Legendarium podcast. And I'm Befuddled Panda. Until next time. Bye.
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 See ya.
I feel like I should be able to swear on this episode. Just
I
saying.
mean, I can bleep it out.
I'm just saying, if we're gonna talk about if we're gonna talk about kink, I don't know why I can't say fuck.
Because the FCC has weird rules, but luckily we're not being broadcast
right.
on cable.
Yes, we are not.